Hey friends, today let's explore who the magi were, the wise men from the birth story of Jesus found in Matthew chapter 2, and a little bit about why this matters. You've probably seen these wise men, these magi, portrayed in nativity sets, heard about them in the Christmas story, and maybe heard a lot of different things about who they might have been. And I think understanding something of who they were can have major implications for our own faith journey today and during the time of Advent. So let's look at a couple of the passages from Matthew 2, then we'll dig in. So it says, in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, so we don't know exactly the time frame here, how long Jesus has been alive when this happened. Maybe a few days, maybe even a year or two. Wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." So, these magi, and we don't know how many of them there were actually. Later in the story, we're told that they give Jesus and the family of Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So we've assumed that there were three, but we don't really know for sure how many of them there were, first of all. But second, it says that they came from the east. And there's many different theories about who they were, what country they came from, what religion they even were. Most likely, they were Gentiles. And very likely not of the Jewish faith. They need a scripture given to them to explain where the Messiah is to be born. So most likely not Jewish, most likely not of the Jewish faith. So who were they? Well, there's many theories out there, one of the most famous being that they are Zoroastrian priests. So over from the area of Persia to the east of Israel, over the Jordan River. Kenneth Bailey also has a really fascinating explanation of this, that they're very likely from Arabia. And he supports this by the fact that things like frankincense and myrrh were from trees in southern Arabia. And apparently one of the early Christian writers named Justin Martyr, writing in the 2nd century, mentions the wise men from, or the magi from Arabia. So they're from the east. They're following a star, so perhaps astrology was an important part of their world, or they were just astronomers and noticed something going on and read that as a sign, so sort of taking us back to astrology again. But the basic point is, were they Zoroastrian? Were they from Arabia? Were they of a completely different faith tradition? We don't know for sure. But what the story seems to be making the most important point is that these were outsiders. Outsiders who recognized that something important was happening with the birth of this child named Jesus. So important that they went into a foreign land, traveled a great distance with expensive gifts. I mean, gold was expensive even back then as it is today. And frankincense and myrrh, something that, again, may have been widely available, but probably not the cheapest of things, and come to offer them as gifts to the King of the Jews. And this to me teaches, or invites at least, two really important considerations. One being, when we picture the birth of Jesus and his earliest years as the God of the universe, as the King of the Jews, as the Messiah, we would probably think of someone surrounded by the wealthy, by the rich in the Jewish nation, by the priests, the scribes, right? Everyone working in the temple. You would think that Jesus would be surrounded by what we would consider the insiders. But at Jesus' birth and his first couple years, what we see are outsiders getting it. And then, of course, the gospel stories talk about how the insiders really miss it over and over again. They don't fully get it. So what might this mean for us? Well, one, I think the birth of God in the flesh, the incarnation in the person of Jesus, being surrounded by outsiders, may challenge us to consider if we've drawn our expectations and lines of who's in and who's out a little too strictly. The expectations of who is going to receive this word and actually put it into practice. You know, we like to make us versus them lines in the world. But the Gospels, the story of Jesus' life, reveal time and again that those we might least expect are the ones who get it. And the ones that we assume are on the inside are the ones who miss it. So first of all, we don't want to be the ones missing it, but we may also want to consider, who is it that in our own mind and heart and spirit and our community do we put on the outside because of a different way of living, how they look, the language they speak, where they come from, some of their beliefs? Have we just sort of written them off and assumed that they're not a part of this story? Because not only throughout Jesus' life, but here at his birth, celebrating, searching for this King of the Jews, were people from far away who would not have probably been considered insiders, coming, risking it all. Because again, by the way, in the story, King Herod is like, hey, come report to me where you find him. And they decide not to. They are some of the closest in the story. They're in the nativity scene, these wise men who travel so far. But second, and this is related to this first one, is that these outsiders saw and responded to the star. How I read this story is that this is a star up in the sky. Others could have seen it as well. Because again, it doesn't tell us that all the scribes and priests and religious followers in Jerusalem also saw the star. It says these people from the east saw it and responded. Was it available for everyone to see and only some saw it? I can't imagine the distractions that were in the ancient world. I'm sure they were numerous. But I also know the distractions that we have today. So many things taking us out of living in the present moment that can block out hearing God's voice and maybe the signs that God is giving us, invitations to love and serve and follow. How frequently I think God is speaking and we may be missing it. So Advent season, and really all year, but Advent is when we maybe focus on this story the most, is maybe an invitation to be a little bit like these wise men from the East and say, I'm going to slow down a little. And you don't necessarily need to look to the stars, right? But we are told in Scripture that day and night creation pours forth speech, revealing something of God's nature. So God speaks through all kinds of things, through creation, through Scripture, through people, sometimes in our own heart, in our body, in our mind. God's still speaking all over the place. Are we listening? Because again, central to this story is it seems like outsiders were the ones listening the most. And they got it. And they responded. And they brought gifts. And then they protected Jesus when Herod wanted to get to him. So, this story, these are only two of the things I think it invites us to. There's many more. But this Advent season, or whenever you may be listening to this, is it time to maybe rethink who we cast out and why? Maybe everyone's invited to the table. Maybe we let the Spirit do the work and we love and invite and share. Maybe the lines we've drawn have been in the wrong place or too strict or unnecessary at all. And then also, how might God be trying to get your attention? And are you aware of it? Are your eyes and ears open? And are you willing to respond? Do we have the expectation that God has, is, and will show up? And are we looking for it? So friends, the next time you see a nativity set or read this story, I hope it has just a little bit of a new angle for you. Maybe invite some new questions. Maybe bring something up inside. If you enjoyed this video and are looking for more, please do like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, leave a comment below with what this might have brought up for you, and I'll see you next time. Grace and peace.